welcome back to the Online Church Blueprint, the best, nay, I say the only Online Church Blueprint podcast, the only how-to church podcast out there for digital churches, for hybrid churches, for those physical in transition or physical churches that are messing around with digital. That's what we do. We're here to help you. We're here to help you grow. We're here to answer your questions. And man, I'm so glad you are here with us whenever you are joining us, however you're joining us, whether that's on YouTube or on Facebook, even if you're picking up the link, or on Instagram or on TikTok, or if you are picking this up via any one of our podcast providers, wherever you get fine audio podcasts, we are found there. Hey, today, myself, Andy Mage, obviously that's me, and our co-host Mark Lutz in just a second. He's going to join us, and we're going to kind of get into a conversation more than just a checklist, and I'll talk about it a little bit up front about what we're actually doing, but today is more of a conversation. Today is more of a traditional podcast format. Typically with the Online Church Blueprint, we're presenting kind of a list of things and check boxes for you to do, but Mark and I kind of work in the same space in the digital church realm, and we kind of do a whole lot of things together. Obviously, I help out with Lux Digital Church, but I'm also kind of helping with the Church Digital, and Mark kind of helps out with Altar Live, and so we're crossing paths a lot. And we have had this conversation many times, and so I just kind of came to him and was like, hey, let's just put the conversation on the podcast, and that conversation is this: what do you do after your service? So I'm not talking about like the rest of the week in small groups. We've kind of had those conversations before, and we'll continue to push those conversations forward and give you tips and tricks along the way. But what do you do immediately after your services? How do you get that lobby feel into your digital church or into your hybrid church? And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. We're going to talk about kind of how Mark and Lux do things, how I and Bayhope do things, and how we kind of cross paths in a whole lot of ways. And there's going to be some interesting nuggets dropped there as well, kind of some thought things. And Mark makes a couple of comments in there that really kind of got my mind really processing and really, wondering and planning for the future of engagement. And so if you ever need any help or you ever want to contact us, Mark's information and my information are located in the show notes or in the doodly-doos below, wherever you're watching this. You can reach out to us on our socials or via email and really ask questions or pop them in the comments. We'd love to answer those live on the air. Of course, Altar Live is really kind of a big proponent of what we are doing here, and we talk a lot about Altar Live today and what Altar Live can do, not only for your live streaming and kind of being a one-stop shop for all of your engagement things, but also after services with this brilliant tool that really has helped propel Altar Live forward called the Lobby. So we're going to talk about the Lobby a little bit and what the Lobby experience is like online, and we're going to get into some real good ideas. So wherever you are, sit back, relax. Thanks for joining us here on the Online Church Blueprint. Here we go. Well, welcome back to episode something. I put episode 4 in the kind of the Riverside thing over there. I think it's episode 4. I don't know.
It's 3 or 4. We're on 3 or 4.
We're on a roll, is what we are. We're doing great here. We're kind of on the holding true to the every other week thing, and man, it feels good to be on a schedule. I'm Andy. I'm one of the hosts here, and to my left, but to your right on the screen is our good buddy Mark Lutz. And Mark, as we typically do now on any podcast that you and I do together, I like to lob you an opening question, just to kind of get.
I never know what it is. So
exactly, and that's
great.
That's the kind of magic of it. I think on one of the podcasts I did, it was like, hey, or we were on the round table, which is something we do for Lux Digital Church, and I said something to the effect of like, "What Pokemon do you closely identify with?" That was a fun one. That threw everybody for a loop. But in this vein, we're just kind of getting into the 2023 groove. We're freshly kind of going. And I guess my question to you is, first off, do you put Christmas lights up on the house? And second of all, when do those lights come down? That's like a big thing down here in Florida, but I'm going to throw that to you up in the north in the cold, wintry reaches of Pittsburgh, PA. When do the Christmas lights come down outside?
Well, much to the dismay of my wife and oldest daughter, I refuse to put lights up on my house.
Really?
I have resisted up to this point, largely because I have freaking no time for that life. Like,
Sure.
whatever that life is of, like, people who somehow have the brain space to think about decorating things. Like, I just don't know where people get the brain space. Like,
Yep.
I guess, and this is not looking down on anybody. You might work doing this all the day, but perhaps if I had a job that did not occupy my brain space, I could then spend my days thinking about things like, you know what, I should put lights up on the house this weekend. As it stands, I'm lucky if I remember that I have a car, let alone changing the oil in said car. So, yeah, I don't know where the brain space or the time comes from. It seems so, like, I understand now why people inflate Santa Clauses in their front yard, because they're like, I don't want to be lazy and not decorate, but I also do not want to decorate. And so let's just inflate some crap in my front yard, and who cares how bad my house looks? I don't care. My kids are happy. And I did see someone this year who had an inflated RV in their front yard from
Christmas vacation?
Christmas vacation,
Aw.
and it actually had, like, what the uncle or the brother, like, bent over in front of it and inflated, like, where he's emptying the sewage tank of the RV was, like, in the inflatable. It was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous.
I'm looking at it right now on Google. This is amazing.
Yeah,
I
it's
think,
the best.
oh my goodness, I might have to buy one of these next year. Oh, it's a 4-foot one. Oh, that's so good. With Cousin Eddie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth it. But to be fair, like, in the area where I'm at, Western PA, there's still lots of people with lights up. I would say lights don't stay up all year, but it is not uncommon to see lights actually not only up but lit. Clear through the end of February sometimes
Wow.
around here. Like, and I think it is because frequently it's cold. We actually seeing more. I would say there's a lot that are down right now, specifically because it's been really warm here since Christmas. We had a really bad cold snap before Christmas, and then it's pretty much been warm here. A couple days after Christmas, it hit like 50, and then it's been pretty warm here since. But yeah, I do not decorate the outdoors. My wife bought this like from QVC, if you're familiar with the home shopping network. For whatever reason, we're 350 years old, so that's on in my house frequently. My wife has house shoes, and we watch QVC, and she purchased a wreath and like a garland that I put up on the door. And this year, we literally didn't even put up the garland. So, yeah.
Wow,
The
you are 350 years old. Also, I'm making a note right now to ask you about the house shoes later, because that's a phenomenon that maybe it's because we're in Florida, but I haven't quite gotten there yet. And I'm older than you, and so maybe it's just maybe you've like lapped me in terms of age.
For the record, there's a lot of people older than me that do younger things than I do. So
True. Yeah, like not have house shoes and things like that.
Yep.
We
Hopefully my wife does not listen to this episode. I love you, honey, and you're the best wife in the world. And I will quit throwing you under the bus on the internet. I promise.
I have yet to see it happen. It is a weekly thing where actually she throws you under the bus too.
Yeah. To be fair, last week at Lux, well, I don't know whenever this releases, she told the entire community, like our entire church, that as a child and a teenager, when I would get upset, I would climb a tree and weep from the top of said tree. And so, the hashtag tree cry has been a thing going around my church recently. About their pastor.
Tree cries hit harder is what I think our rallying cry has been.
Yeah, so I don't feel now I feel less bad. I still love my wife, but I feel less bad.
Yeah, it's good. Down here in Florida, people go all out with the Christmas lights usually because there's never any snow, of course. And then they're promptly down. Like I did outside our house just a little bit. I didn't do the full second story because I hate heights and like ain't nobody got time for falling off and breaking things. And I do just enough to satisfy my wife and my kids. Like I get just to that line, and then it's like, okay, I'll put them on a timer. They'll switch on the Wi-Fi. They're part of the smart home thing we have set up. I push a button, everything blazes on, and then I push a button, everything comes off at a certain time. It's great. And then I had ours down by December 29th. Like, it didn't even make it to the new year. So literally the day we were pulling down all the Christmas decorations in the house, I was pulling down the Christmas decorations outside because I don't want to look at it anymore. I'm I'm done with that season. We're moving into a new season. We do have one house here that does do the all-out sort of like synced lights thing.
Ooh, yeah.
Actually, when we were living in Georgia, we had 3 houses in Georgia. Our third of the 3 houses was in this awesome neighborhood, awesome cul-de-sac. There was maybe 100 homes in the neighborhood. Super small, had like an HOA, but the HOA was just like nothing. The guy across the street was the HOA neighbor. And so picture this house. Like, it's a perfect Georgia house. It's 2 stories, but it's built into a hill. So there's like a finished basement, 3rd story. It had a wraparound porch. It was all screened in. We had like an acre of land. We had a little river or like a stream running through the backyard. It was like we had like a tree house back there. It was picturesque. Loved that house. And yet, the guy that lived across the street was the HOA president, and he was that dude that did his entire house, like, decked out. Started decorating in October. We had traffic around Christmas time. We had traffic from Thanksgiving Day up until, like, a week after New Year's, to the point that we would have to put traffic cones out and on the weekends go and, like, manage the flow of traffic. And so I distinctly remember standing at the top of the hill next to a cone with either a cup of coffee or a cup of hot chocolate or maybe some other adult beverage in a glass.
Sure.
Talking with people as they're driving by, and we had a line that stretched out the neighborhood. And then like our blackout curtains didn't work on our bedroom, and of course our bedroom windows were facing this house, and so it was just like fireworks happening for like a month and a half. So I'm glad we don't live there anymore for that reason.
Bah humbug! I moved my house to a new state to get away from you.
I mean, legitimately, we moved. Yes, we moved state. Okay, we're not here to talk about Christmas lights. We can wax poetic about all that. The Online Church Blueprint, if you've been hanging around with us for longer than 5 seconds, you know that we are trying to provide practical how-to tips on digital church and kind of digital expressions of what Jesus is doing in community. And typically, we like to follow kind of a checklist thing. I like to give you something practical. Mark gives you something practical. We put it in a checklist. We give you a nice PDF, and we say, here you go, have fun, like, go do the thing. But today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're actually just going to have a conversation, and we want to invite you into the conversation. We've kind of prepped this, kind of big, broad strokes, but really, we kind of have philosophies on what church engagement looks like, and so we wanted to talk about those. And we're not talking like about just church engagement throughout the week and social media and stuff. We're particularly talking about that thing that happens after your church service. And if you've been to a church, you know what I'm talking about. That thing, the doors open, you go out to the lobby, and there's kind of the milling about in a physical church. And, you know, we Mark and I are calling it the post-service engagement, you know, the post-service wrap-up type thing. And we really want to have a conversation about that today because digital church is different. Like, obviously, broad strokes, it's just completely different. And we do the post-service engagement thing a little bit differently. And one of the things I admire about what Lux is doing is that it actually takes its post-service engagement to kind of a different level. And so, Mark, I'm going to back off the mic here, and I want you to just kind of walk me through the genesis. Well, tell us first, like, what actually happens after Wednesday night services, but then, like, where all that came from and the philosophy behind it.
Sure. So I think that this is a larger scale, it dips into our big toe into a larger scale conversation, which is, can we look at what we're actually doing as a church, not just Sunday morning from 10:15 to 11:30, but can we look at what we're doing at a church Monday through Sunday throughout the course of the entire week? Can we boil down what is the most important things as to why we do right? Because a lot of times when you look at, let's say, a hammer and you're like, well, we really need to use the hammer, right? We need this tool to be able to do this thing. And it's like, no, what's important is that we drive in the nail. And so that's what the hammer does. The hammer isn't the important piece. The nail being driven in and holding two things together is the important thing. And so the question is there another tool that we could use to serve the exact same purpose and make sure that it's happening? And so for us, when it comes to post-service engagement, I wanted to look and say, what are the things that are actually happening when people exit your sanctuary doors in some other aspect of your church that is vital and important to the lifeblood of your congregation? And how can we mimic those things using maybe not a hammer, but a nail gun? Or let's say I don't have it. In some cases, the digital world actually presents you with better tools than what the physical world does. And in some ways, it's a give and take, right? Some days it gives you worse tools. So in other ways, I'm saying like, well, I don't have a hammer and I can't use a nail gun for this, but I still have to get this nail in. Can I go get like a monkey wrench and just smash it? And so what is the best tool that we have available to us to serve the same purpose of getting this nail driven in? And so for me, when it came, the genesis was saying, and this happened across our entire church experience of saying, boiling down, what is church? What are the important aspects of what we do as a church? And what tools can we do to get at the same thing? And so for post-service experience, I really saw two vitally important things that happen in the 15-minute window after people leave your church service and before they exit your parking lot. And those two things are connection with one another and a touch point with your pastor, right? And so the connection with one another is because, hey, we exited and it was like, oh, I saw Joe and Jess across the way. We didn't see them when we came in because we entered at different times, but I saw Joe and Jess across the way, and I just really want to check in because we know that Joe and Jess's son, Kenny, was sick this week, and we just want to make sure that Kenny's doing better. We want to check in with their family. And so they're our friends. Joe and Jess are real people. Kenny's a real kid. We actually stopped after a service. This actually happened, right? So on Sunday, my wife and I were in service. We saw Joe and Jess on the other side of the sanctuary a couple of weeks ago. We knew Kenny had been sick. We knew their family had had some illness around Christmas time. We just popped in to have a couple of moment conversation to see how they're doing and just let them know that we're thinking about them. That's an important touch point. The other thing that's this important touch point is as we exit the sanctuary, there are people who stand in line to say goodbye to Pastor this week. So let's call this person Pastor Chris because this is the pastor. So here's Chris. He's standing there. People are exiting. And there's a couple of things that happen in that transition, right? There are people who come out and say, great service, Pastor. Really loved that. And then there are people who come out and they say, Pastor, I haven't had a chance to tell you because I wanted to say it in person, but my mom got cancer this week, or my dad is in the hospital this week, or I am going through a divorce and I really need somebody to talk to. And they just didn't feel comfortable calling the church phone. And so on their way out, they told their pastor what was going on, and their pastor gets this moment to have a touch point and to potentially share a prayer with this individual that, theoretically, this allows them to know that the church cares for them, that their pastor hears them without the pastor having to schedule a hour-long or 2-hour-long meeting with this person on some other evening of the week that they simply can't spare. It actually lets the pastor have momentary, important, caring, compassionate touch points with maybe a couple hundred people all within the course of 15 minutes. And that's vitally important for the life of the church because it lets people know that they're cared for without the pastor having to schedule 15 1-hour or 30-minute meetings throughout the course of the next 6 days. So I said, okay, how do we actually encapsulate those things? If you're in another church, there might be another couple of things that happen that are really important, right? The first-time guest allows there to be a welcome experience. They get the coffee mug. They get the local coffee shop gift card in the coffee mug. We get them to fill out their connection card and get some basic information about them. We can send them a letter that week and follow up with them. The other thing that might happen that's really important in your post-service experience is a ministry time where there are a couple people up front, right, that we can go up and receive prayer, or maybe you have a separate, ministry room where they can go and receive prayer, but there's a place where the pastor can only touch base with you for maybe a couple of seconds on their way out, but this person will be able to volunteer to spend maybe 15 minutes with you and really focus in on caring for you and hearing what's going on in your life. So I was like, we need to be able to do all of those things in the post-service because believe it or not, my sermon, although important, worship, although important, one of the most important things that's actually happening is those things taking place. And then your team watching you as the pastor do those things, because this becomes the catalyst for them to learn and to grow and for you to sort of rub off on team members. It's a really important thing that takes place, because in the digital church, it's just very rare for your team to learn how to lead and learn your culture by osmosis, whereas you can saturate an entire physical environment with your culture and with your leadership. And as your leaders step into your environment, whether they're greeting or no matter whether they're in children's ministry, whatever they're doing, they're actually immersed in that environment and they're soaking it up. And everything communicates what is excellent about your church. Everything communicates what's important about your church. And you can, from the graphics that you do to the whatever vinyl sticker that's on your wall to the check-in system that you're using, everything communicates something to your volunteers and to your team and to your staff that is not easy to communicate, because you don't get the ability to immerse people in a digital experience in the same way that you get to when they walk into your building. So you have to learn to be more intentional about those things. Obviously, I could riff on this forever, but I think it's important when you're thinking about your post-service experience, where that's going to take place and how it's going to take place, that the time of ministry, the intentional next step and welcome for a new person, right? Someone who's new there, the connection to one another, a place where they can connect to people they know, care about, or new people that they want to connect with, and the touch point with your pastor or whoever preached that week that they feel now comfortable coming and engaging with. I think all of those things need to find a place in your post-service experience as a digital church, just as much as they naturally happen in your post-service experience as a physical church.
So I want to back up actually to the beginning of everything you said, because this was kind of something we had talked about pre-service, and I'm glad you brought it up. You said that church is not about, obviously, it's not about the service. Everybody, we unfortunately put I think you said disproportionate amount of time and energy and resources into the actual service planning itself. And yes and amen, that's kind of one of the downfalls of Western church, in my opinion, and many others' opinion. But what does that practically look like online? Like, what do you mean that you're planning then around connection? Like you're obviously, I've been to Lux, I'm part of Lux. I know that there is care and planning and attention and things that go into the worship service itself. But what do you mean when you're starting to look at post-service engagement then? Like, what are you consciously writing sermons around that? Are you consciously directing thoughts and prayers and attention? And then let's take it a step further. How are you actually doing the thing? How are you actually meeting?
Yeah, no, I love that question. And I would love to know a little bit of how Bay Hope, being a hybrid church, does this as well, because I know that you guys are trying to do more of that, right? So I think this touches on a larger scale issue inside the church, which says that we are creating consumeristic Christians that really come just for the show on Sunday morning. Then most of our churches buy LED walls and new projectors. And if you looked at our annual budget, we spend more money encouraging and reinforcing consumerism than we do on anything else.
Oh.
And then all of our churches said we would like to go hybrid. And we said, you know what? I'm afraid that the online world is going to create a even more consumeristic culture about Christianity. So let's take the most consumeristic portion of church and ship it and only it to our online world. Let's ship literally nothing else. Let's just take the most consumeristic aspect of our church and ship it over to people online to make it easier for them to access. And then let's all get pissed off about how consumeristic American Christians are. And so here's the thing. It's like, if you create the monster, don't be mad the monster's there, is kind of my opinion when it comes to this. But I also I'm not saying that pastors are evil or manipulative or monsters either. I get it, right? Because we just haven't thought critically about what's going to be important in the digital space. And so therefore we haven't thought about how to do it differently yet. And that's okay, right? Sometimes it takes people to really try something new and think differently about it. So all of that to say, like, practically speaking, what does this mean? When we first started Lux, I was talking with Jeff Reed of the Digital Church podcast, and we're in the Digital Church network. That's part of the network that we're in. And he asked, like, well, how do you spend your time? Twitch is where your church is. And I said, it's not. Twitch is where our sanctuary is, right? And the same is true for you. Your digital church expression, where you do your service, stop thinking about that as your church building and start thinking about that as your sanctuary. Because as a pastor, that there's so many important things that happen with your church. In fact, some of the most important things that happen for your body, your faith community as a church, happens outside of sanctuary time. And so if your Facebook live stream or your YouTube live stream or your Altar Live live stream is your sanctuary, then where is all of the other things that make you a church going to happen? And if we want to break down the walls of consumeristic Christianity, especially in digital space, then we actually need to put more emphasis on other areas, which is why I've said from the beginning, 80% of my job is in Discord. 80% of my job in my life is in Discord, not on Twitch. There's a small portion of our church that's on Twitch, and it's when we click go live. Everything else, the community, the development of the faith of our people, the discipleship, all of those things, our Bible studies, everything else is happening over on a separate platform that is more conducive for connecting with people and building community and hearing people's stories. So let's just real nuts and bolts. What does it look like on an average week for our post-service experience? Our post-service experience actually starts on Twitch. We actually begin it there because it gives all of the people that just want to cycle through the service at the end and say, good job, pastor, and ask me a question. It gives them all a chance to do that all at the same exact time.
Yep.
And so we do service for the first hour, and then in the last 10 to 15 minutes of our live stream, I'm literally sitting on a couch talking to chat and just answering any questions that they have. Maybe I'm inviting somebody in and having a conversation with them. We've done a lot of different things with it. But the main point of it is, last week we had a chance for Ashley to come in and say, this is the best digital church I've been to. And Ashley would have said that if she was at a physical church and she thought that was the best physical church that she was ever at. And she would have stopped by and taken 10 seconds of the pastor's time to say, man, this is the best physical church I've ever been to, best church I've ever been to. But Ashley was able to communicate that just through a live chat, and I was able to respond to it, interact with it. So the beginning of the post-service recessional marching pastor and shaking hands and kissing babies began happening right there in that 10-minute. And we got to field what was probably a difficult question, but here's the beautiful thing. That difficult question, the question that we had was about spiritualist and speaking with the dead last night. And what happened was that question would have typically been given to the pastor and the pastor only in their exit from service. And the pastor would have been able to give 15 seconds, maybe a minute or two at the max to that question. But I was actually able to give a little bit more time to that question, and my entire church was able to hear the answer to it instead of just me and the person who was eavesdropping behind the person who asked it, which was a really cool thing. And then we say, hey, this isn't the end of service. This is the next step, right, is coming over to Discord with us. And we open up a bunch of video chat rooms over in our Discord server. You can do the same exact thing in Altar Live, which is my favorite feature of Altar Live. It really is. There's nobody else who does it like Altar Live. They're the only one, which is one of the main reasons we tried Altar Live. For us, it didn't work only because the gaming culture is very used to Discord, and getting people to jump platforms is very difficult. But we went into Zoom has breakout rooms, right? We just go and hang out. There's a Meet Pastor Mark video chat room. People can stop by and chat with me. There is a prayer room. People can stop by and ask for prayer. Chino was in that last night. Andy was in that last night, and people stopped by for prayer. There's a welcome room. And one of our team members, Brendan, was there last night, and someone was there with Brendan for probably 15, 20 minutes, and he's able to just meet them and hear their story a little bit and share and answer questions. And then we have all of these just sort of hangout rooms, and people stop to those hangout rooms, usually are there until, midnight or so. Just checking in. It was cool. Last night, got to see Tell and Bougie in the same room together. I know they're just checking up, right? They're just hanging out for a couple of minutes. Doc was in there with 4 or 5 people until 11:30 at night. Just same thing that would happen as people were exiting, going to your parking lot to get in their car. And so we saw that time of ministry happening, saw that next step happening, saw that talk to your pastor happening, saw that connect with the people that you saw in service and you wanted to check in with, saw that happening, all in our post-service experience, all in Discord. Different tool, same nail, right? Same set of nails, still hammering the same 4 nails, just using a different tool to hammer all 4 of them. Some better, some worse, but they're all getting hammered in.
So the nail then for Bay Hope is the same, obviously, and the nail for every church out there that's listening to this is the same. You want to make sure that when people are leaving your service or leaving your event or whatever, that they feel welcomed, they feel, whole, they feel like they're part of the family, but also that they're being engaged and that they're helping to be understood that they're actual people. They're not just, I hate it when churches say this, but giving units. You're not just nickels and noses or, butts and bucks or whatever it's called. And for Bay Hope, we are kind of doing the hybrid thing, obviously. And this is for a lot of churches out there that are experimenting with this. We have the luxury of having a studio, but this can actually be done with anything, really. I take great care in designing our times, our service times, to make sure that we are constantly looking at a camera at some point, talking to the people on the other side of that lens. Be it before service, we usually do a 3 to 5 minute thing up front, just talking with people in the chat and welcoming them in and making sure that people are really part of the action. And all of this happens on Altar Live. There's seats in Altar Live. You can kind of turn on cameras and really engage with people there. That's during the service. We don't need to talk about that. After the service, however, I started to realize that we needed some sort of post-game wrap-up. We've been doing this for about 2 years now. There was a lull in, whatever happens on the platform or whatever happens in main service. Somebody will look at a camera, the pastor will look at the camera, the worship leader, guys have a great day or whatever. We'll see you next week. But that doesn't mean anything in the online world, because we'll see you next week might as well be like a month from now, or, we constantly are seeing each other online. And so there's this weird sort of a day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is but a day to the Lord type thing. And so I started dropping in a post-game wrap-up. And literally we just cut to our studio or cut to whatever camera we have open. And I would just simply start talking to the camera. I started bringing guests in. It's currently one of the guys, it's our colleagues. His name's Austin. He's awesome. We call it Sunday School just to kind of poke fun at the fact that Sunday School is like this old, outdated thing. But in all honesty, it's also kind of a little spot for us to learn. And Austin and I will sit there and we'll rap for 8 to 10 minutes about what happened in the service, kind of what we saw, what we drew out of it, anything that happened in chat, any prayer requests. We'll kick it to somebody that's in the sound booth and we'll talk with them for a little bit. We'll add another camera. We're upping our production quality. But the whole point of that is that hangout time then leads us into those lobbies of Altar Live. And the lobbies of Altar Live are fantastic. And so we'll do our post-game wrap-up, and then we'll kick it to a lobby. And then if you've never seen what a lobby is, you can go to altarlive.com. You can sign up for a 14-day free trial. There's millions of videos there that I've actually made that are all about how the lobby system works and how tables work and how meetings work and how rooms work. And the best feature is that you get done with a service, you as the leader don't really have to do anything except just hit a button, and everybody that was live in your service now is transported live into this lobby area. And this lobby area literally is set up with tables, just 4 seats. You can click on a seat, boom, you're live, and then your camera turns on, your microphone turns on, and now you're talking with somebody. Just like what is happening in Discord, except, so Mark referenced the hammer and the nails. It's a different tool to hammer in those same nails. So we get out of Sunday School, the lobby opens up, everybody gets transported in there, everybody goes to their tables, we rename one of the tables, meet the pastor, we rename one of the tables, meet the worship team, that type of thing. We rename one of the tables, tell me why football is your favorite sport, and then another table, why football is the worst sport, that type of thing. We're constantly trying to derive little bits of engagement, and we'll keep that open as long as people are in there chatting. Obviously, we're different than Lux in that we have to shut down at a certain time because we got another service to get to and there's only so many people. But we'll keep that open and let people engage. And that then furthers the conversation to move them into our own Bay Hope Discord and our own Bay Hope Facebook page and our own Bay Hope Twitter page and our own Bay Hope YouTube channel. And so we're constantly shuttling people around. And that seems like a daunting task, I think, for a lot of people. I think a lot of people in the church nowadays, and Mark, you can kind of attest to this because you and I and Greg have these conversations about social media and about engagement with people. It seems like a daunting task. Like, oh my gosh, I have to talk so much. But like, it's so much easier than it used to be. You don't have to drive to houses. You don't have to do hospital visits like that. You don't have a text will speak volumes. A simple Discord message or a simple DM on Instagram will go so flipping far. And so that's really where the post-service engagement starts, is right there. One thing you also said that I kind of want to get to, and we can kind of start to wrap up on this if we want to, but you started talking about really the construct of meeting the pastor, and you called it the reception line, which I think is a fantastic idea. How, let's say, put yourself not in a digital pastor seat, but put yourself in sort of a kind of a hybrid role like we're doing right now. How do you convince people that are in your digital church that you're trying to engage with after your service that you are a real person? How would you go about doing that?
Oh, that's a really great question. There's so much of me that's glad I'm not in a hybrid context. Just to be perfectly honest with you, like, I love the physical church. I love leading a digital church. It is so life-giving. But the concept of being in a hybrid scenario like you're in, Andy, sort of reminds me of like the early 2000s blended service. The perfect opportunity for everyone to be pissed off. And so this let's meet in between and kind of do them both thing. I think it makes it exceptionally difficult, right? Because your pastor needs their focus on this physical church, right? This physical church that's there. There's people who need to talk to them. They can't be in two places at the same time. They can't talk to your digital audience and them. Like I watched an online church of one of our partners this week and was there for the online service. And the pastor was like, "Hey, let's give it up for the people online." And like, yeah, I mean, I'm one of them, I guess, but I didn't really feel like anyone was really applauding me, right? Because they weren't there for me. It's clear that it's not for me, right? The whole thing, the service ends and the stream ends and everyone goes to the lobby and I click close and get breakfast. And so, it's just like, there's no way for me to engage, even on YouTube, it just said, this is the host. It didn't even give me a name for the host, right? We shared a quick joke, but we're the only two people who talked the entire service. And we only talked because it's all of this is, how do you convince people that you are a real person? Like, you have to be able to interact with them. Like, you have to be able to read what they're saying, and then you have to interact with them. And then you have to create a funnel where people can channel themselves towards relationship. And people will actually do this naturally. There's this phenomenon where you see someone on a screen or you hear someone in a podcast and they're influencing your life, but you don't have a connection to them. And you suddenly desire a connection to them, right? For whatever reason, there will be people who listen to this show and they will think that we are experts in digital church, and then they will want to, by nature, draw closer to us in some capacity, right? This is why people say, hey, if you leave us a review on iTunes, we'll read it out loud. And people are like, I will then leave a review on iTunes because you will read my comment and I will feel like I am a friend of yours. And so there's this false sense of feeling close to somebody that you see on the screen or that you're listening to. And if you give people the opportunity to draw closer to the people on that screen, they will naturally follow that pathway because they will eventually want to do exactly that, which is why when we invite people to Discord, they join Discord, which is why when we say come meet the pastor, they will come meet the pastor frequently, right? People will naturally channel inwards. It's the same exact impact if you have a stage and your pastor's on the stage and the people want to come and talk to the pastor afterwards. They feel a connection to that pastor, even though they have no real relationship with them, simply because they've seen them on the stage and they'd like to draw close to them. Exact same thing happens online, so people will naturally follow that. The problem with many of our experiences in digital church is that we don't actually ever afford them that opportunity, right? They never actually get the opportunity to take a step closer to you. So you consistently feel like a person on the stage and you never become humanized. And so presenting people that opportunity by responding to their actual comments, by talking to them directly, and by giving them an opportunity to jump into a more personal and intimate setting with you in a one-on-one video call, or a three people just jumping in to meet the pastor at the end of service, does really make a substantial difference. And I think that you can actually do this pretty well in a hybrid context. But so if I was in a hybrid church, I'd be doing something very similar to Bay Hope, in the fact that I would be like, my lead pastor's job isn't actually to engage with these people. The preaching pastor, they might as well be a video. We might as well pre-record it and hit play, because they're not actually engaged with these. But the point where we get engagement and pull people into relationship is before and after that sermon and worship time, where I'm actually here earlier and I'm staying later. And then I would ask a very important question. Why in the heck am I doing multiple services back to back? Because it doesn't make any sense to do them, because you're not limited in seating capacity or parking lot capacity. You can seat 15,000 people in your sanctuary, because it doesn't matter. So why do multiple online services in a similar time frame when you could just spend more time engaging before and after? And that's what people were really there for anyway. If you're going to do multiple services, do it so you can reach different time zones. Do it so you can reach people in China or the EU who can actually sit in your sanctuary, which I think is another entire conversation for another day, and I'm getting on a rabbit trail, and that's okay. And then what I would do is I would create that space to come and enter into a more intimate environment afterwards with people who are also part of my digital experience, or with my pastor. But if my pastor can't jump online, then I would certainly have the person who was in the pre and post service experience engaging with chat and talking with people, have them get a chance to come and meet me, because they're going to build a deeper connection with you if you're responding to their comments than they will with the pastor who looks like he's on a video anyway.
Yep.
It looks like he's pre-recorded. And then beyond that, the other thing I would say, if you're a hybrid church, stop thinking about this as, well, we want an online presence, and start thinking about it as, we want to plant an online church, which means hiring somebody who is a campus pastor who preaches. It's way more important than like, if you have a physical church where you have campuses and you're doing the Craig Rochelle thing and you're shipping in the video feed, great. It's awesome, right? You have the pastor who's up there beforehand, the pastor's up there afterwards. He's talking with people. It's kind of what we're talking about here. I think it's actually more effective and important in a digital church plant to have a actual campus teaching pastor who is preaching, because that person gets the chance to engage with the chat and respond to them differently than a physical church pastor. Because the person who's sitting at your main broadcast campus is engaging with the people who are in the room, and the people who are in the room at your campuses feel like they're engaging with them a little bit, right? Because it's kind of synonymous. They're on a screen, but it's physical person engaging to physical person, and they're physical people, and hey, he's a digital person. So there's something that makes sense there, right? But when you have a physical person engaging to a physical audience, then that digital version of that can't really engage with that digital audience in the same way they would be able to engage with the physical audience, because there's a breakdown of communication and understanding there. So if you get the digital person engaging with the digital audience, I think it's much healthier and much better. So when you're thinking about planting a digital church expression, like a digital campus for your church, consider doing it with a campus pastor that actually does the teaching. You don't just ship the teaching to it.
You should write a book.
I am writing a book, actually. So it's coming out maybe theoretically in November of this upcoming year. Well, 2023. Yeah.
Maybe theoretically. I love the caveats there. All good stuff there. I appreciate your wisdom and your insight. All the digital pastors out there, all the hybrid pastors, and all of the pastors that are looking to really engage and plant and grow their digital expressions and their digital footprints should listen wisely to those words. Especially the ones that talk about not just increasing their digital exposure, because church is not a billboard. Your digital presence is not a marketing piece. It is a community. It is a viable community, and we're proving that all throughout the kingdom right now. Mark, thanks so much for being on the episode today. I just caught you while you were drinking some water. Thanks so much for lending some of your insight.
Yeah, man. I love sitting around, and I feel bad sometimes because I get on these rules because this is just what I think about every day. And then Andy doesn't talk because I just go for 40 minutes. But one of these episodes, I'm going to keep my mouth shut, and Andy's I'm going to ask the questions.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'll believe it when I see it, jokingly. But second of all, this is what we do. You've got the big brain stuff here, man. I just serve up the things, and you just kind of spike them. It's great. It's a good relationship. I like how this works.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I hope that all of our listeners are enjoying it as well.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to join us all throughout that. Hey, you heard me reference Ultra Live briefly in there and kind of where to find us. But if you are interested in trying out any of these features with Ultra Live, the lobbies, the meetings, your event spaces, any sort of group areas, you can head over to ultralive.com and click the button that shows up right in front of you to try a free 14 days on the platform. Literally free, like no credit cards or nothing required, just free. Try it out, see if it works for you, really start to plan and dream of what's possible with amazing tools like we've been given here. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Online Church Blueprint. If you are in the Apple ecosystem, please do us a favor and leave a rating and a review. I don't like algorithms. It really helps us in that algorithm. I would love your help. If you are on YouTube, it would be awesome if you could hit the old thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed, hit the old subscribe button. There's going to be more here. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, you can always hit the follow button to make sure that the algorithm does its algorithmically thing. But hey, until next time, I'm Andy Mage. We'll see you then.